Revolutionary Marxism. C.L.R. James and the Revolutionary Marxism. Selected writings of C.L.R. James, 1939 to 1949. All right. So, like, we're talking about here. Let me just warn people here, right now. All right. Hold on. Let me get to the table of contents. So, the table of contents: Introduction, C.L.R. James, and Revolutionary Marxism by Paul Leblanc. Part 1, Remembering C.L.R. James. C.L.R. James, the thinker, writer, revolutionary. C.L.R. James, the recollection. Nello, Marxism in the USA. Part 2, Revolution and Black People. Native Sons of okay, go. Here we go. Like Trotsky's place in history. All right? So we see all these things. All right. Let's go. Here we go. Acknowledgement. Do I do acknowledgments? Okay, I'm going to do acknowledgement. All right, just to kill time. Let's find out. Wait. Let me find a copy. Go into our library, go into the communist books, and go up. I'll just read the acknowledgement, so no worries. Since my first encounter with C.L.R. James's work in 1988, I have been encouraged and assisted by a number of friends and associates. Research into the development of James's thinking and activity has in itself been extremely rewarding as an investment of energy, but no less gratifying as is the sense of community, even at times of collective effort, that has accompanied the process in preparing this volume alone. I have incurred debts of gratitude to several people. It is with pleasure that I acknowledge, if not repay them now. Okay, so this is just a bunch of acknowledgement. Okay, no. Okay. All right, we'll wait. I'm going to go to the introduction. You got it yet? Rocket?
Yeah, I have a problem. I think I found the book, but it has a different cover than the one you have up.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine.
That's fine. That's the right one?
Yes, because read what it says up here.
Yeah, I was making sure. Okay, so I'm going to... hold on. Where's the button?
Even non-Trotskyists think even at the time, they still think he's good.
There it is.
I think next I'll do Frantz Fanon and then Eric Williams's Slavery and Capitalism and Slavery. All right, you ready? Here we go.
Wait. What page are we on?
I'm on page 11.
Okay, page 11. Alright, I will mute.
Okay. All right. Cyril Leon Robert James, 1901 to 1989, is generally acknowledged to have been one of the most original Marxist thinkers to emerge from the Western Hemisphere, yet essential aspects of his identity came from the other side of the Atlantic, from Europe and Africa. As he explains to his friend John Bracy, I am a black European. That is my training and my outlook. He offered penetrating analysis on the interrelationship of class, race, and gender, and his discussion of colonialism and anti-colonial revolution could be brilliant. But C.L.R. James almost embraced the heritage of the Enlightenment, of the French Revolution, the working class and socialist movements in Europe and North America, the Bolshevism of Lenin and Trotsky, which transformed Russia and promised to liberate the world from all oppression. An essential aspect of James's method to make him links between seemingly diverse realities, sometimes to take something that is commonly perceived as being marginal and to insist that it is central, This is done in the manner that profoundly alters, rather than displaces, the traditionally central categories. Perhaps the most widely acknowledged examples is his pioneering decision of the, quote, the Black Question in 1930 to 1940, which illuminated the realities of race and class in politics, contributing to a new understanding of the role of African Americans in the struggles of the U.S. working class. The attentive reader will find that such a methodological approach generates innumerable fruitful challenges, which will help to move one's thinking forward on the variety of issues. It is hardly the first anthology of James's writing to be published. The very first was his special issue, The Radical America, in July through August 1970. The C.L.R. James anthology, a sampling of articles and excerpts edited by the new left historian and theorist Paul Buell. The next three, the future and the present spheres of existence, and at the rendezvous, I can say it. When you're there, when I need you.
It's rendezvous.
Rendezvous of victory supplement one another, constituting the 3 volume selected works. They have so much to offer, especially when reading the conjunction of Paul Buell's boldly new left biography, C.L.R. James, the artist as revolutionary. The 5th anthology, the C.L.R. James Reader, edited by Anne Grimshaw, has appeared shortly before the present volume, with the exception of one essay, The Revolutionary Answer of the Black Problem in the United States. One of the material in this book has appeared in other volumes that have been published. The other collections seek to provide a sampling of James's writings from 1930s to the 1970s and 1980s, giving greater attention to James's cultural criticisms, as well as a Caribbean nationalist and Pan-Africanist contribution. By contrast, this one offers a concentrated selection of writings from his Trotskyist period in 1930s to the 1940s. A follow-up volume will be a new Humanities Press edition of James's 1960s classic, Modern Politics. Our original intention had been to include here these wonderful 1960 lectures delivered in his native Trinidad. James' experiences of revolution in his earlier Trotskyist period heavily flavored and the interpretation of Western civilization that his present and modern politics. While some James enthusiasts are inclined to give the Trotskyist aspect of James's career short shrift and continuities, as well as the discontinuities between the early and the mature James, are quite illuminating. More important, this passionate and critical mind writings have much to offer readers even 4 and 5 decades after they were written. In the present introductory essay, the exploration of James's relationship with Trotskyism will be combined with a partial and critical evaluation of certain aspects of his thoughts, with special emphasis particularly in the notes, as his complex and shifting views about the question of revolutionary organization, James and the Trotskyist movement. Some of James's most enduring contributions to Marxism were made when he was part of the Trotskyist movement, a revolutionary political current that has risen within the larger world communist movement in the late 1920s, fighting for the conception which had animated the original Russian Bolshevik led by Lenin and Trotsky. Those drawn in Trotskyism opposed the rise of the bureaucratic tyranny which dominated the Soviet Union and world communism under the latter leadership of Joseph Stalin. Lenin had died before the struggle against Stalinism fully unfolded, but Trotsky became the symbol of a transcendent alternative, a democratic and internationalist communism, which attracted relatively small groups of workers and intellectuals in many lands. Trotsky's life from the death of Lenin onwards was devoted to the practical and theoretical struggle to free the international worker movement from bureaucratic domination so that it could resume a successful overthrow of capitalism on the world scale. Perry Anderson has observed, adding that the tradition descended from Trotsky provides one of the central elements of any renaissance of revolutionary Marxism on the international scale, contrasting it to the politically passive yet academically prestigious Western Marxism. Anderson note that this other tradition, persecuted, revealed, isolated, divided, will have to be studied in all the diversities of its underground channels and streams. It may surprise future historians with its resources. I became a Marxist through the influence of two books I read, James once told an interviewer. One was Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution, and the other was The Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler. Yet it was more than simply reading books that propelled him into a revolutionary trajectory. There was, of course, his own intimate experiences with imperialism and racism as an inhabitant of the British colonial preserve in the West and the Caribbean, and also his earlier contact with the working class and revolutionary movements upon coming to England as a young journalist. I joined the Trotskyist movement, he explains in several listeners, in 1986, and I learned Marxism in a Trotskyist movement. The Trotskyist organizations with which James was associated in the United States and Britain never had more than 1,000 or 2,000 members at any one time. The distinctive political tendencies which he led, from the Johnston Forest tendencies to the Facing Reality group, never numbered more than 100 inheritance. Yet their analyses and political activities had a far greater weight, sometimes influencing tens of hundreds of thousands, and in some ways, even more. James came to Trotskyist movements very much as an independent thinker, with a substantial store of previous knowledge and insights. His book, World Revolution, was a critical theory of analysis of the Communist International, greatly influenced by the left opposition, perspectives associated with Leon Trotsky, yet by no means uncritical of Trotsky. James' intellectual and political qualities were highly valued by Trotsky, who stressed that, quote, "It is very important to conceive James that his criticisms are not considered by any one of us as an item of hostility or an obstacle to friendly collaboration in the future," while complaining of a, quote, formalistic and one-sided quality of the book's analysis of Stalinism. Trotsky accepted some of James' criticism of his own earlier positions, asserted that, quote, "Not only Bakunin, but I and all of us at various times wrote absurd things. I will grant you that. World Revolution is a popular history of high quality and upholds well more than half a century after publication, demonstrating the breadth and depth that were to become the hallmark of James' work. The first chapter on Marxism stresses the E.J. Hobsbawm, after termed the central importance of the dual revolution of the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution in the formation of the scientific socialism of Marx and Engels. It highlights Marxism's internationalism and class analysis, concluding with a discussion of politics, tactics, and that indicates a continuity from the call for permanent revolution by Marx to the theory of permanent revolution developed by Trotsky. In the chapter on Lenin, we are treated to the thought-provoking confrontation of Lenin's libertarian goals as outlined in State and Revolution, with the failure to realize those goals in post-1917 Russia. Throughout James's demonstrates the utter incompatibility of the bureaucratic and authoritarian qualities of Stalinism with the revolutionary, democratic, scientific, and humanistic qualities of Marxism. In 1938, James moved to the United States to contribute to the work of the newly formed Socialist Worker Party, SWP. This organization was led by James P. Cannon and Max Stachman, prominent veterans of American communism, and since 1928, among the foremost representatives of the international current associated with Trotsky's ideas. Frank Lovell has offered this description of James's entire entry into the U.S. revolutionary movement. When C.L.R. James came to this country from Britain, where he was a leader of the Trotskyist movement, he was welcomed into the Socialist Worker Party and given leadership responsibilities. James was an impressive speaker with his British accent and his poise. He was a tall, handsome black man, originally from the British Caribbeans. He spoke without notes, standing aside from the podium on the speaker platform. It was as if he were a great actor delivering a famous oration. At his first appearance, he shared the platform with Stachman and Cannon in the Irving Plaza meeting hall, where Trotskyist meetings were often held. Stachman was the first speaker and was not brief. James was the next, and even though his talk was longer than Stachman's, he completely captivated the audience and received a big ovation. Cannon was the last speaker. Although he was the national secretary of the party and had been announced for a major speech, Jim had no intentions of standing on his dignity or trying to hold the audience so late at night in order to have his turn. He put aside his notes, congratulated James on his speaking abilities, and welcomed him to the Socialist Worker Party. Among James' most substantial contribution was his assistance in making the SWP aware of the centrality of the black question to the class struggle and to any genuinely revolutionary perspective in the United States. The classic essay reprinted here, Revolution and Black People. They use the N-word with the R-O, which first appeared in the WSP's theoretical journal. New International is one of the first and one of the finest efforts to relate the experience of African peoples and revolutionaries to the perspective of and development of Marxism. At the same time, he made a genuine contribution to Marxist theory, which was reflected in the resolution written by the SWP in 1939. Quote, the American black people, for centuries, the most oppressed section of the American society, the most discriminated against, are potentially the most revolutionary element of the population. James explains in one resolution, they are designated by their whole historical past to be under adequate leadership and very vanguard of the proletarian revolution. He added that the broader perspective of Trotsky's theories of the permanent revolution will remain only a fiction, unless revolutionary socialists could find their way to the African American masses. The second resolution noted that African Americans might feel moved on the basis of their own historic oppression to advance the demand for the establishment of an administration of the black state. He explained that, quote, in revolutionary crises, as they begin to shake off the state coercion and ideological domination of American bourgeois society, their first step may well be to demand the control, both actual and symbolic, of their own destiny, rejecting schematic definitions having to do with whether black people in the United States constitute, quote, a nation. James pointed out that, quote, the raising or support of the slogan by the black masses of black people will be the best and only proof required. Under such circumstances, revolutionary socialists should support the demand, the realization of which could constitute a, quote, step forward to the eventual integration of American black people into the United Socialist State of America. James added, the advocacy of the right of self-determination does not mean advancing the slogan of self-determination. Self-determination for black people means that black people themselves must determine their own future. He also observed that the awakening political consciousness of black people not unnaturally takes the form of independent action, uncontrolled by whites. The black people have long felt, and more than ever feel today, the urge to create their own organizations under their own leaders, and thus assert, not only in theory but in action, their claim to complete equality with other American citizens. Such a desire is legitimate and must be vigorously supported, even when it takes the form of a rather aggressive chauvinism. James' next point is of particular interest. Quote, black chauvinism in America today is merely a natural excess of the desire for equality and is essentially progressive, while white American chauvinism, the expression of racial domination, is essentially reactionary. This general orientation was a creative application to U.S. realities of Lenin's position of oppressed nationalities and orientations with James's elaborated and dynamic interactions with Trotsky. It was so advanced for its time that the SWP proved incapable of fully assimilating it. James was by no means the only black leader in the Socialist Worker Party. Ernest Rice McKinney, a black social worker, journalist, trade union organizer, had been prominent in the U.S. Trotskyist movement since 1935 and held a different integrationist, assimilationist position. This position had been advanced in the SWP resolution a year earlier, which simply expresses the party aim, quote, to convince the white workers on the one hand and the workers of black people on the other, oppressed groups on the other, that their interests are the same, and that, quote, the complete equality of black people and all other races boiled down to the elimination of, quote, every form of race discrimination, combined with, quote, the complete abolition of capitalism. Even James soon felt compelled to raise a public criticism of, quote, an overstatement of the importance of African Americans in his 1939 resolution. Instead of being, quote, the very vanguard of the proletarian revolution, they could not be more than, quote, in the very vanguard. In any event, a split in the SWP in 1940, which took James as well as McKinney out of the organization, contributed to the insights and perspectives of the 1939 resolution remaining unimplemented. The position which James had advanced, however, exercised a residual influence, which could be seen in the SWP's recruitment of the layers of militant black workers in the mid-1940s, which may have contributed to James's own 1947 return to the party. In the 1960s, James' positions also established a basis for understanding the rising tide of militant struggles of nationalist consciousness in the black community. While these new developments proved to be unexpected by utterly confused to many observers, Trotskyist analysis of George Brittman was able to draw on the earlier perspectives to provide a revolutionary Marxist explanation. Especially important was Brittman's ability to highlight documents and help popularize the profoundly revolutionary meaning of the ideas and examples of Malcolm X, which would have been impossible without the kind of analysis pioneered by James 25 years before. At the same time, it is clear from material in this volume that James by no means confined himself to, quote, the black question. His approach to world around him was comprehensive, multifaceted, and penetrating. As a revolutionary internationalist, he concerned himself with revolutionary events in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and with real struggles of the working people and the oppressed in the United States. James participated in a founding of the World Network of Revolutionary Socialist Organizations, formerly established by Trotsky and his co-thinkers in 1938. The Fourth International, he served as part of its International Executive Committee from 1938 to 1940. In 1938 to 1940, James was part of the wing of the Trotskyist movement, led by Marx statesmen, that split away from the Socialist Worker Party. Despite the brutal purge trials of 1930s and the Yahtzee Soviet Pact of 1939, Trotsky had maintained that the Soviet Union continued to be a worker state, that some of the gains won by the workers during the Russian Revolution survived and should be defended not only from the bureaucratic dictatorship of Stalin, but also in event of any military conflicts from any capitalist country. Stochman argued that the Soviet Union had ceased to be a worker state, that in the event of a war between the Soviet Union and the capitalist country, revolutionary socialists should remain neutral, opposing both combatants. According to Stochman, the Soviet Union had become a new form of class society, which he termed bureaucratic collectivists, and was no less oppressive and exploitative than capitalism. James and a grouping of co-thinkers agreed that Stochman in part, but they assert that the Soviet Union had in fact evolved into what they called state capitalism. The old private property capitalism was disintegrating from its own contradictions, being superseded by a system falsely claimed to be socialist. Yet the gigantic bureaucratic mechanism in Russia confronts the individual workers with economic and political consequences. They are not other than those of capitalism. James argued the growing power of the working class, promising to dissolve the alienated dynamics of bourgeois society, could only be subdued by the use of state terror and totalitarian savagery. Represented by the Stalinist bureaucracy, two representatives of the more orthodox Trotskyist perspectives were later to explain the SWP's majority criticism of this perspective by designating Stalinism as a typical development towards which the whole world is headed to in default of the victorious proletarian revolution. James and his co-thinkers actually endow this transitory bureaucratic formation with a social and economic foundation of its own, and with both the historical necessity and future. Oh my gosh, approved. It's not approved. Of course it wasn't. Oh, Rocket's in here. Rocket, did you mean to come up? Do you mean to come up?
You totally up, Rocket, if you'd like. We take breaks and talk.
Did you mean to request? No, you didn't mean to request. They didn't mean to request. Okay. Okay. All right, no worries. It seems to James that those sharing his views that they had much more in common in the orientation of Max Schatschem, though this would soon prove to be an illusion. At first, James assumed the prominent position in the newly formed working party led by Scotchmen. The Workers' Party, WP, had taken control of the SWP's prestigious theoretical magazines, the New International, and James remained as one of its important contributors, along with the significant layers of intellectuals and writers who accompanied Scotchmen. The polemics between the two components of the fractured movement were fierce. From the SWP in its new magazine, Fourth International, Joseph Henson expressed special indignations over James's critical appreciation of Trotsky's contained in this volume. James penned the article under his party name, C.L.R. Johnson. Johnson praises Trotsky's brilliance as a theoretician. Henson complained, only in order to lay down an authoritative basis for making Trotsky out a gullible and pathetic fool in practical politics, and therefore in politics of the last fraction struggled in which Trotsky engaged, in which Johnston bitterly opposed Trotsky. Hinton's extensive defense of Trotsky contained the severe judgment that Johnson viewed of politics are the view of the petty bourgeois intellectual drawing back from politics. In fact, Hinton himself would soon conclude that the judgment was too severe. Within a few years, James had become alienated from Scotchman's leadership of the Workers' Party and developed a more positive appreciation of the SWP, a grouping around James in Rhea Dienskiai, I can't say it, whose party name was F. Forrest, known as the Johnston Forrest tendency, flavored in reunification of the two groups, in opinion of such SWP leaders as James P. Cannon, there were significant elements of the Workers' Party struggling valiantly against the revisionist, retrogressionist current of Scotchmen, especially in the Johnsonites faction, who hold as rather false positions, in our opinion, on the Russian question, but on all other questions are very close to us, the Fourth International. James' contribution in 1943 to 1944 issue of the New Internationals that are reproduced here suggests why Cannon might have been so favorably impressed. In the American tradition, the working class movement, in perspective, focuses our attention on the indigenous militant traditions of the U.S. working class. Yet James also placed this tradition in an international context, with a comparative look at the British working class. The conclusion of this article reflects the revolutionary optimism about the U.S. class struggle, which coincides with the line of the 1946 SWP documents written by Cannon, the American Thesis, published with the important speech of his in the pamphlet The Coming American Revolution. The Johnston Forrest tendency felt that, quote, the speech of Cannon, with its problematic or reorientation and integration of revolutionary perspectives at the home marks the coming of age of American Bolshevism. The tendency similarly looted Cannon's earlier works, The Struggle for Proletarian Party, as, quote, a outstanding contribution to American Bolshevism. Although this was the major work of the SWP majority in the 1940 split, in fact, the Johnston Forrest group, blaming themselves no less than Scotchmen, termed and split an unpardonable error, an unprincipled split, for which the majority was responsible. The existing documents of both the majority
was responsible. Sorry.
Yeah. The existing documents of both the majority and the minority of 1940 prove that there was not the slightest basis for the charge being made today that the minority of the 1940 had been bureaucratically mishandled by the Cannon-led majority. They became severely critical, in fact, of the Workers' Party under Scotchman's leadership, the all-inclusive party, concerned only with sex, grouplets, and shades of opinion, concerned not with the party as an instrument of struggle for the proletariat, but for the protection, as they say officially and unofficially, of the ideological life of minorities. The result, behind all the anarchistic and ideological life of anarchistic freedom of speech, and one solid political reality, is Scotchman's response to a given moment to the political and organizational pressure by which he decides the political line of today. The political line resulting from this method was a pessimistic view of the political backwardness of American workers and of the consequently poor possibilities for socialist revolution, a perspective characterized by, quote, economic determinism, masquerading as Marxism, and preoccupation with, quote, honest leadership. The belief in the passivity of the masses under the control of leadership, Whereas in view of the Johnson Forest tendency, the proletariat is not, in any sense, of the word backward. It is ready for revolution today, as never before. James' outlooks infuses the essay, the international traditions, the imprint here, which provides a comparative analysis of the contemporary European and U.S. labor movements, and at the same time highlights the importance of a revolutionary Marxist party and a possibility of the mass U.S. Labor Party. The American... What'd you say?
Can you slow down a little bit, please?
The American people in one word, one world. Similarly, concluding, in the contradiction and barbarism of world economy, we see the soil from which, at whatever remove, and through whatever corruption, without and within, must ultimately rise the Fourth International. The revolutionary optimism of James and his closest comrades by no means represented an inability to engage in critical reflection. Over the next few years, in fact, all wings of the Trotskyist movement seriously attempted to come to grips with the failure of working class revolution to materialize in Stalinist Russia and the capitalist West. Although the revolutionary upsurge had been forecasted by Trotsky as a probable outcome of World War II, the Johnson Forest Group welcomes the process of re-evaluation that is taking place, but expresses dismay that the Sketchamite majority in the Workers' Party had, quote, revised the whole Marxist-Leninist Trotskyist strategy in the light of the Russian disintegration. They were also critical, however, of, quote, the official Fourth International, which under the blows of the delayed revolution has continued to seek theoretical stability and the progressive character of the degenerate worker state. Their polemic, titled The Invading Socialist Society, was especially critical of Ernest Mendel, the dynamic young Belgian who was a leading theoretician of the official Fourth International, whose party's name at the time was Germain. Mendel advanced an analysis based on Trotsky's old position, contradicting their own view that the Soviet Union had become, quote, a vast state capitalist trust. Yet, as they put it, we joined with Germain in holding off Sketchman and the other guerrillas in order to face him with the origins and consequences of his utterly false political position. The group's hope that was that the reunification of the Workers' Party with the SWP would provide a framework for the clarification of these different positions. They were especially optimistic because, quote, the SWP was a proletarian base which was accumulated years of experience of knowledge. Sketchman torpedoed unity negotiation in 1947. Later, James wrote of the Johnson Forest tendency that precisely our serious attitude to the fundamentals of Marxism led us to leave the happy-go-lucky improvisation of the Workers' Party, and in 1948 to return to the Socialist Worker Party. Welcome back into the ranks of the mainstream Trotskyists. James's ounce again played an important role there, helping to orient. What?
James once.
Thank you. Helping to orientate the party in its black liberation work. The contributing major articles to the organization magazine using the pen name J. Meyer. Of special importance here, his writings in the SWP magazine, Fourth International, gathered in this volume on the history of the contemporary situation in African Americans. At the same time, James and his co-thinkers gave eloquent expression to the revolutionary Marxist insight that working class democracy was essential to the very conception of socialism. as he and others of the Johnson Forest group asserted. The struggle for socialism is the struggle for proletarian democracy. Proletarian democracy is not the crown of socialism. It is its basis. Proletarian democracy is not the result of socialism. Socialism is the result of proletarian democracy. To the degree that proletarian mobilize itself and the greater masses of the people, the socialist revolution is advanced. The proletarian mobilizes itself as a self-acting force through its own communities, unions, parties, and other organizations. None of the members of the Socialist Workers' Party disagreed with this outlook, nor would they necessarily discount the Johnson Forest insistence that, quote, it is the task of the Fourth International to drive as clear a line between bourgeois nationalization of the economy, and proletarian nationalization as the Revolutionary Third International drove between bourgeois democracy and proletarian democracy. But the SWP majority was not in agreement with the corollary drawn by the Johnson Forest tendency. The Russian proletariat in particular, and the world proletariat in general, must make no distinction whatever between Russian state capitalism and American imperialism as the enemies of the proletariat and the chief torturers and oppressors and deceivers of hundreds of millions of workers and peasants. No less critical of the various bureaucratic suppression of working class democracy under Stalin, the SWP majority did make a sharp distinction between nationalized planned economy in the Soviet Union, which should be defended, and the advanced forms of capitalism as they exist in the United States.
Okay.
Johnson Forest.
We have questions.
Yep.
Okay. So like while we're reading, I'm sorry. I'm struggling to understand some of the stuff we're reading. And I
Yeah.
was wondering if we could go back over some of the stuff we were just reading.
Okay, where?
Okay. So like when you're going back, it's so like
Why don't you just
Well,
tell
for
me what
me-
you're not understanding?
I didn't understand like most of it from when you started reading. So, but I was gonna
This is
just
only
ask
the
you for a
introduction,
summary.
too. This is only the introduction too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then Rocket had a couple of questions.
Which was the last claim, though? I don't know. Okay. JTF. Johnson Forest tendency. So you don't know what the Johnson Forest tendency is what you're saying?
Yes, I don't know that.
Johnson Forest tendency. It's a Wikipedia article. Johnson Forest tendency, who was supporter of the so-called Johnsonites, was a radical left tendency in the United States associated with the Marxist humanist theorists, C.L.R. James and Rhea Dianskia, can't say her name, who used the pseudonym C.L.R. James, C.L.J.R. Johnson, and Freddie Forrest. Respectively, they were joined by activist Grace Lee Boggs, who was considered the third founder. So these are what they're saying. So the Johnson Forest tendencies, I think, is going away. Much of the story of the Johnson Forest tendency relates to disputes between the various factions of Trotskyist parties in the U.S. James and Dianskia, I can't say her name, is freaking huge, first met the Socialist Worker Party from 1934 to 1940. It was a bitter fight amongst the members of the Socialist Workers' Party in 1940. James and Dianskaya and Mark Sketchman, among others, split from the Workers' Party. James and Dianskaya set up a study group within the Workers' Party to work on the ideas of state capitalism, and were soon joined by Lacey Boggs. While the new group rapidly cohered around politics, which were very similar to the Socialist Workers' Party, there were certain differences which eventually led to the formation of the Johnson Forest Tendency. The majority of the Workers' Party members believed, as did Sketchman, that the class nature of the Soviet Union was such that it what should be designated as a bureaucratic collectivist society. The majority, it's just another tendency. Which probably be, I don't know. That's what I got from Wikipedia. It's breaking away. It's breaking away from the split. They're talking about the split in the Workers' Party. They had a disagreement of something. Any questions? That's the best I can get you.
No, I don't have any questions except for what page are we on again? Because when I looked up,
21.
Thank you.
Yeah. The Johnson Forest Tendency continues to advance its perspectives throughout democratic debates within the SWP. And in 1950, the SWP's internal discussion, James and his co-thinkers explained to their comrades that all tendencies inside world Trotskyism, sharp as the differences may be, have been united in adherence to the fundamental theory of permanent revolution, in maintaining the traditions of Bolshevism, and irreconcilably opposition to all other tendencies. The reformists. You gonna say something? Irreconcilability.
Got it better than I could have gotten it.
Yeah. The reformist social democrats, the Stalinists, and adherents to, quote, pure and simple trade unionism or busyness unionism, etc. In the labor movement, the idea put forward by Johnson Forest originated in that common heritage and have no other purpose than to bind us together in the advancements of our aims. Yet the Johnson Forest adherents also sharply differentiated themselves from the majority of the SWP. They noted that most of the contending currents of the Fourth International were sincerely attempting to apply Trotsky's perspectives to new realities, interpreting and bringing up to date the basic ideas of Trotsky. They point out, we are not doing that. We are not doing that. Our position is that the chaos in the international is due to the fact that Trotsky's method of analysis and system of ideas are wrong, and that the chaos in the international will continue to grow until a new system is substituted for the present one. That was essential. They insisted was to comprehend that the rise of state capitalism in the Soviet Union meant that the world capitalism as a whole had entered a new phase, amply, as well a new phase in the struggle of the working class. Because of the state capitalism in Russia, they thinking that the capitalism moved into a different phase. So there's a little bit about the Johnson Forest tendencies there.
Right, I was going to say, and the way that it's highlighted in the book, well, it's underlined and marked. Mm-hmm. You know that some Trotskyists came along and did that. Yeah. So, like, this is probably a very, hint. This is the most important kind of thing.
Well, the Johnson Forest tendencies was inside the SWP, and I'm guessing between that they didn't like those things. So let's find out some more. The Johnson Forest tendency remained. I gotta make sure the time. Remained a loyal and energetic component to the SWP until 1951. Among those whom his adherents helped recruit to the party was Evelyn Sell, a young student activist whose wide-ranging interests included art and theater, as well as politics, made James's own expansive approach to reality especially appealing to her. Many years later, she recalled James's truly impressive intellectuals and personal, in fact, charismatic qualities, asserting that he was really a beautiful man, a beautiful human being. She also found the members of Johnson's political tendency to be politically and intellectually impressive, and yet she came to view the group, as she wrote in 1976, as a cult in the party which regarded Jimmy Ford Johnson as James was known by many party members. It as a sort of god. At his signal, all of the Johnsonites in the party suddenly dropped their membership in 1951 without political debate, without any explanation. Johnson, as it turned out, had a personal gripe with the party leadership, and he simply pulled out all his followers. James himself remembered, they were expecting that we would come in to the SWP, thinking that the people who were with the Johnson Forest tendencies had joined their party, not because of me, but because we had a clear doctrinal statement. We joined them ideologically, but we went on and trained them in that way to remain loyal to the Johnson Forest perspective. Not one of them left the Johnson Forest group, and Cannon and company were very disappointed. Real quick, I'm gonna remember 22. Oh, there we go. Never mind. This was slightly overstated. So what they're saying is they worked with inside the WSP and had the same type of ideological lines, but they weren't agreeing with them. And they're saying too that C.L.R. James was probably underneath the Johnson thing. That's what they'd said. So these were inside, So, but they're starting to disagree with the leaders and the party leadership right now. This is slightly overstated, since some tendencies members, as such as Art Fox, Eddie Fox, Stephen Zucklerk, and Barbara Zuckluck, disagreed with the new split and remained in the SWP until the mid-1960s. Sells herself, although becoming a leader of SWP members in Detroit during the 1950s and 60s, continued to adhere to the Johnson Forest state capitalism perspective for several years more. Yet the Johnson Forest departure made little political sense to her. The same was true for the SWP leaders, James P. Cannon. The Johnsonites were personal cultist followers of Johnson as a messiah, and when he finally gave them the signal to jump out of this party for reasons known only to himself, but allegedly because of some personal grievance that he imagined, of which they would which they had no knowledge, of which they had just heard about. They all left the party at the same time, Eastern Standard Time. And we'll go in the break with the Trotskyist movement. So this is leading up to this break. That's what I'm getting. Can I do that? Can we do that? So page 22.
Yeah, sorry, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, and thank you for kind of going back and helping me out there, because I was struggling a bit.
No, it's okay. The Johnson Forest tendency is also in the other book too, and it's been like it's getting a little bit of critique in it too. But this is the whole reason. I think this is the reason why. This is another reason why C.L.R. James left the Trotskyist position too. Plus, he also retreated back to like Hegel's depictions and stuff like that to have a materialist analysis, to do the inversion that Marx, Lenin, and Engels did to tip, they say on his head, but the book says to put it on his back on his feet, the dialectics of a materialist analysis. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So
he had a wonderful life learning, didn't he?
Yeah. But like, so this is probably controversial for a lot of people because I'm not a Trotskyist, not a Stalinist. I have my beefs with those two people. I'm a Marxist. I put myself in a Marxist position with Fanonist thought because Fanon is essential in my framework and how I analyze the world today too. Because Fanon brings on the Manichaean perspective of like colonialism, the master-slave dialectics within those things, and then he moves into more of a materialist analysis through like like his book on Wretched of the Earth and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, really? As I work listening, right? Yeah. That James stuck to the state. Yeah, he stuck to state capitalism stance. Yeah, he did. Because like there was still capitalist relations within the Soviet Union. There's no doubt about it. They didn't move into a complete negation of capitalist relations. Because in order to do that, you would have to do a world revolution, which the Russian Revolution was hoping for, because the Germany was supposedly the Western European country that was supposed to move into a direction of a proletarian dictatorship. When instead, you know what they fell to anyways? They fell to the Social Democrats. They unalived Rosa Luxemburg, who helped starting the German Communist Party. And they unalived her. They unalived a whole bunch of people, and they moved towards a direction of expansionism and like fascism and stuff like that. So they moved towards that instead, you know? So like if all that didn't happen and if everything worked out, we might be seeing a communist world system by now. Who knows? That's just idealism. That's just all in the brain. You know, that's just all in the brain. It's not like reality. But in my opinion, Germany didn't help the cause of the revolution being a world proletarian revolution, because like there are different tendencies with permanent revolution when it's in the Trotskyist position, and I don't know what it is compared to like Lenin and Marx's position on the permanent revolution. You know what I mean? So that's all I have to say. You know, but I think that people, like, when you talk to people, you ever notice when you talk to people and they go, "I'm a Trotskyist," and they go, "Ew," and the person goes, "What's wrong with Trotsky?" And the person says, "Ew," hasn't even read anything about Trotsky to have a good critical critique of Trotskyism. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's fascinating. I should look into it more. No, I haven't read anything on it. I've been focusing on learning the dialectics and understanding the Marxist view and analysis on the political economy. So I've been doing that. Oh, what page? Hold on. So I've been doing that a lot. Like I just finished Historical Materialism by Nikolai Bakunin, and now I'm on I forgot, it's called something, Economic and Manuscripts of Marx 1844. So I'm reading that right now. And that's when Marx was, I'm getting that number. That's when Marx was still coming out of his Hegelian tendencies and moving more into a materialist away from Hegel. 22, page 22. Oh, you got it. Thank you. But yeah, like these things are fascinating. To me, what's fascinating is taking someone like Lenin or Marx and reading their earlier stuff and progressing forward and seeing how they developed their analysis, how they developed their tendencies from when they started to like more matured development in their life. It's fascinating. I think with Lenin, it's the same thing, and I'm fascinated with those things. You know what I mean? So like I'm going to start with one of his first critiques of the political economy and maybe even read the Holy Family. So I might read that. But like my whole goal is to get to the level of understanding Hegel's dialectics and being able to have some better understanding and better depth when it comes to reading Marx's Capital. Because if I'm a Marxist, I need to learn the basis of Marxism, which is capital, right? That's where all these analysis and stuff of Marxism comes from. It's rooted in that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So it's important, I think. Oh my gosh, I have to appeal another thing. So for me, I think it's important for me, so that way I can understand and I can go back and read like Lenin and Mao and Stalin and have a good materialist analysis based on the tendencies and the principles that I gain from these readings. You know what I mean? I think everybody should be doing this. Everybody should be like going back and understanding a little bit more about why am I a Marxist? What makes me a Marxist? What are the things that are different from a Marxist and a like an ANCOM? What are the different Marxist thoughts? You know what I mean? There's many different Marxist thoughts. To understand is a better realization of how things can arise and come about. You know what I mean? I don't know. A whole huge yap fest right there, but I think people need to stop like need to stop putting themselves in these boxes of like, I'm a Marxist and I'm sticking straight to this. No, as a Marxist, we're supposed to read like controversial stuff and have a Marxist analysis of it and come away with some good things that you might have learned from it and some critiques of it. Even the favorite people, like I want to learn like the critiques of other Leninists that were around the time critiquing these things and what are their critiques and their positions in these things, you know? Apparently reading Marx, Wage, Labor, and Capital helps. Yeah, I'm going to read that one too. Yeah, I'm going to read that too. So yeah, I'm going to do that. But this book right here, and I keep bringing it up, this book right here has drove me for that project because I need to understand dialectics and how to apply it correctly, because understanding how dialectics work and how they arise, where they come from, and then how to apply dialectics is important as a Marxist, I think. Especially a Marxist dialectic, based in the material reality, you know? Yeah, I didn't know either. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say I went and listened to Capital while two people read it, and
Me
I
and
was
Chico.
struggling. Yeah, you and Chico.
Yeah. We even read it and then watched videos on it.
The,
You
the
know?
videos helped a lot.
Yeah, they did.
Videos did help a lot.
I hear there's a new version of Capital. It's the latest translation, and I'm hearing from other people that it's a pretty good translation and it's good. So there's that too, and stuff. So, but anyways, thank you everybody for being here and listening to me yap. I appreciate it, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close out. We'll continue reading this and cross their fingers that no one comes in here and be like, oh my God, you're a Trotskyist, you're horrible, blah, blah, blah. You know, revisionist. You know, the people give reactionary responses without doing analysis first. And that's what kind of pisses me off about the internet sites. No one does analysis before reacting. We need fewer reactionaries online. But anyways, including me.
Hold on. I am trying to send a gift.
You're
I'm
what?
trying to send a gift.